I think, like many other verticals, we expect the way people do compliance and security completely to change, right? And, on one side, like whereas today in our line of business, whether you're preparing for an security audit or you're actually giving the audit, it's just still seeing a lot of manual work, right? People taking screenshots, people, marking check marks on trackers, collecting evidence manually. And also, for our team doing the actual audit assessment in a manner that should be enhanced as AI workflow. Right? And it will be hard to imagine that, in 5 years, people are doing those things manually.
Security and compliance is unignorable when you're either building AI in the enterprise or selling AI to large companies. That's why I'm excited to bring you today's episode, which is with the CEO and co-founder of Thoropass, Sam Lee. Thoropass is a Series C startup that has raised $98 million to bring security and compliance to large companies, to mid-market companies, and to startups alike. We get into all things compliance and AI, what agentic AI means for security and compliance, how regulation is going to be key to how the AI market shakes out, and why regulators need to catch up, how going up market and selling into enterprise changes your go-to-market strategy, and how to navigate buying committees, something that Thoropass went through during their transformation, and the difference between integrating AI into compliance solutions like Thoropass offers their customers, and helping companies deploy AI in a compliant way. Finally, we get into the wow moments that AI is creating with customers as it's being integrated into products, how you move from that wow moment to POC to full-scale deployment, and finally, Sam's personal favorite AI tool. Spoiler alert, it's not ChatGPT. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Chief AI Officer. Today I'm speaking with Sam Lee, who is CEO and co-founder at Thoropass. Sam, thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here. Nice to meet you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk all things AI, compliance, security with you. You've done some amazing things at Thoropass. So, before we get into that, you've built multiple startups in different domains across insurtech, now compliance tech. But what was for you the first meaningful encounter with AI, and how has it influenced what you're building at Thoropass?
So, hello, everybody. I'm Sam, co-founder and CEO of Thoropass. I should probably add the Chief AI Officer to my title sometime soon. I'm playing the de facto Chief AI Officer at Thoropass. And just a little bit about what we do. We are an information security and audit solution for companies to get, stay, and maintain compliance with information security frameworks and security standards such as SOC 2, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, HITRUST, etc. So I've been a technologist all my life. I started my career as a software engineer. Back then, I think OCR was the cutting edge of AI in the 2010s of the world, which obviously now is common sense, which kind of is I think true AI is really a moving target. As the technology continue to advance, new things come out. So in a more narrow sense for Thoropass, my encounter with Gen AI happened 2 years ago when when GPT-2 launched, right? I think they were saying that, hey, it is too powerful as a technology that we have to consult with the ethicist before we launch it. And now, as we know, GPT is going from 4 to 5, and the original GPT-2 can actually be done in an Excel spreadsheet, right? Just kind of shows how fast things are moving. It's about, I think it's after ChatGPT launched that we started seriously considering using Gen AI in the tools that we build. And I like to view this as two sides of the coin. On one side, there's a lot of compliance and audit workflows that can be enhanced and automated through Gen AI technology, which was not available even 3 years ago. At the same time, with the prominence of Gen AI, there's a lot more new compliance requirements, nuances, and new security risks that are emerging. So I call those AI for compliance and compliance for AI. Both are very interesting topics that we dabbled upon here at Thoropass.
I would love to dig into both of those. In terms of AI for compliance first, LLMs, generative AI, notoriously unpredictable, right? Not deterministic systems.
Right.
How do you deal with that in compliance? How are you building this into products and how is it helping your customers?
Very broad topic. I think the most of the compliance standards out there are based on the call it pre-LLM world, right? Things are more deterministics. There are certain different frontiers of securities that you have to be mindful of. But with the introduction of LLM, many things change. There are new, just completely new areas of risks that people did not have to pay attention to, but now they do, such as bias, hallucination. It also, creates more kind of renewed needs for things that have always been a problem, such as DLP, data loss prevention, right? There are just more reasons for employees to share sensitive data to the chatbot or to, Gen power systems. And it's very hard to know how much the LLMs are retaining the information being shared, which clearly is a problem for many enterprises that have sensitive information. So I think both, brand new areas and existing areas calls for new compliance frameworks and new technologies to manage all those risks. In terms of how we help our customers, right? Like this, we're all in the early innings of that. The entire industry, the regulators are in it. Usually it starts with some sort of internal AI acceptance of use policy that we recommend our customers adopt, and usually being followed by a more robust data classification, right? Because ultimately, a lot of the risks come from sharing data with external AI systems. And if it is a kind of more of a nice to have or like a very enterprisey type of exercise before GenAI, now it becomes a must have for a much broader set of companies. Because if you control the data that you share outside, usually that's a good starting point for managing novel GenAI risks.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest risk that everyone is talking about. Do you see any other unique challenges when it comes to compliance for AI and when it comes to helping your customers stay compliant with highly regulated frameworks like SOC 2 or high trust?
Yeah, so there are several new things that are coming out, right? So hallucination, obviously, it's very hard to control and it's very hard to kind of fully eliminate. So which creates a liability issue, right? If the AI says something that is wrong or give your customer the wrong guidance, like who is responsible for it? How much responsibility does the platform have versus the customer on handling this? And as a result, companies needs to have a way to monitor and test their systems, which is different from a traditional sort of software regression or integration testing regime, right? Because you are not testing whether the code is breaking or whether the UI is behaving the way it is supposed to. You're testing if the GII power systems is doing the right thing. And that calls for fundamentally different technology and tools, which we saw many companies and startups building towards. So I think that's one additional new risk. Two, I think, is around the in a more regulated industry context, right? Sometimes there are, for example, interactions with customers or internal interactions that are subject to rules that are specific to industry, right? As a financial advisor, there are certain things that you can or cannot say. If we believe in a world there a lot of the customer interaction will be done by Gen AI, then who's going to make sure that those things do not happen, right? So that's another example in terms of control the liability and the language that are being used by those LLMs. Another area is obviously bias, right? If we're relying on AI to make more and more decisions, how do we make sure that it is optimizing for the right thing, right? Most of those tools are using foundation models, and which is, as you said, a bit of a black box. How do you make sure that the AIs are making the best decisions, both from an economic perspective, but also from ethics, from a legal and environmental perspective? And those things have to be adjusted in many cases, and some companies don't have the ability to do so at scale. So what is their responsibility to make sure those rules are being followed? So a lot of kind of interesting new areas that pop up, which were not issues before.
Yeah, I guess from the standpoint of someone like yourself who has co-founded a compliance company, there's a lot of opportunity in this space, right? A lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities. And given your experience in insurtech and compliance tech, which AI applications across those industries do you think are overrated? And which ones do you think are flying under the radar?
That is a very good question. I think there are many areas in the industry that are hidden from the customers. The use cases that are most prominent features tend to have a customer interaction component, right? We see a lot of obviously customer support bots being launched now powered by AI. So I think those are great, and they will get better. What I think is overlooked is a lot of the back office work that currently are done by heavily, frankly, offshore teams, right? And in the insurance, there's a lot of like claim processing work that is being done. There's a lot of like back office support that is being done. In healthcare, there's a lot of coding, right, which is all being done by people. And we expect that, in a couple of years, right, the models are going to get so powerful that, those, people who are doing those work, not only their productivity will be enhanced, but also like their entire, like 90% of their work can probably be done better with AI agents, right? And then we'll get to an era where it would be ridiculous to not have AI doing the work because it's so accurate compared to human, right? We're probably like, in most industries, as the model gets more robust, we're probably like 5+ years away from that. But that paradigm shift is going to come at some point. So I think people probably pay more attention to the more flashier example that have a customer facing experience. But actually in the back office, we expect a lot more automation to come. And eventually it's going to flip the paradigm of what is being done by human agents versus AI agents.
Agent, the word on everyone's mind at the moment, as you said, I think particularly in the enterprise, in some of those more operational capacities, I have to imagine that a company that is working in compliance for companies like this, that is both a huge opportunity and both a huge challenge, just in terms of the sheer scale of activity that you're then going to be having to make sure is compliant. Can you give me a bit of insight in terms of how you're thinking about that? Like, what do AI agents working across like enterprise functions mean for compliance?
So we're leveraging Gen AI technologies across the board in a lot of the technology products that we're launching. Not only as a way to make ourselves more efficient, but we'll also take this as an opportunity to create a 10x experience for our customers that were previously unimaginable. So, for example, today actually we launched a new feature called First Pass AI. Traditionally, one of the areas that people waste a lot of time in the information security audit process is once you submit the evidence, you have to wait for the auditor to review them before you get any sort of feedback. And oftentimes, like the mistake that you make are actually very easily fixable. Like your screenshot is missing a URL, or we're looking for 6 months of data, but you for some reason skipped the months of March. But you don't get that feedback until very late, right? And it's only because it takes a human have to review it at some point in order to give you that feedback. First Pass AI, what it does, it gives you that instant feedback the moment that you submit those evidence. It cannot tell you if you're going to pass the audit or not, right? But it can tell you if your evidence is complete, if it's accurate, right? So you don't have to wait until a human review it. So that is an example, a novel use case of Gen AI in the process of compliance and audit. And we're applying this to external audit, internal audit, due diligence questionnaires that traditionally things that take human hours to do can now be done at a like 95% of accuracy by Gen AI, but it still oftentimes requires a human review at the end. But it could be done in a very efficient way that really elevates the customer experience.
I love that example because it's a great example of a very specific way in which you can use LLMs for kind of like document processing, intaking, like kind of going through the to-do list.
Right.
But ultimately, right now, they are incapable of reasoning at the level of proficiency that you need in like a very domain-specific application like compliance. So I guess you're combining the best of both worlds and kind of accelerating the process, but also ensuring that you have a human in the loop and making sure that that stuff is accurate. So I think it's a great way to show how you can combine those two. I mean, shifting a little bit away from the technology and towards how you've grown Thoropass, what's kind of your go-to-market strategy right now, and how has it evolved since you founded the company?
So we serve a lot of technology companies, hospital systems, financial institutions, and like many SaaS companies, like we have a mix of different go-to-market strategies. I think compared to a couple years ago, where we do mostly direct sales and there's like inbound and outbound, we're seeing more tractions with different kind of channel partners, right? And in the startup world, it is accelerators, different sort of VCs and community networks. And in the mid-market and enterprise, seeing channel partnership with managed service providers, managed security service providers, which I think is a trend that many SaaS and subscription-based businesses are facing. That direct selling, direct outbound, right? The efficiency is dropping because people get like too much noise. Frankly, the availability of all those AI tools make it a little bit worse. So folks, they listen to people they trust, which in many cases are partners of those software solutions. And there's more kind of in-person selling events, experiences that really help you stand out as a brand.
Yeah, that fits with everything I've seen in this space too, that going to systems integrators, infrastructure partners, the hyperscalers are really the ones that are helping to build that credibility.
Right.
And it's getting very hard to stand out from the noise with all the tooling out there. I have a lot of chief AI officers on this show that I know are the target of many of these companies, and it's just they get flooded by so much stuff. It's hard to know what's what. I mean, now that you are, I believe you've just you raised the Series C, you're in a different phase of the company than even a few years ago, I'm sure. What's kind of your top priority for growth, and what's the biggest hurdle you're facing?
So we started the company based on the pain point that I faced as an insurtech entrepreneur before, right? So that was 5.5 years ago. Very quickly, we realized that the technology that we build, the problem that we're solving, not only resonate with fast-growing kind of early-stage technology company, but really is also a problem for mid-sized organizations as well as enterprise. For the first 3 years of the company, we decided to prioritize that fast-growing technology segment, but that has changed over the past 2 years. So, the technology that we build really resonates with those different constituents as well. However, what that means is we also need to adapt on the go-to-market side, right? Because there's different buying habits, there's different, purchasing, like different sales cycles, right? Different go-to-market strategies that, some things that worked despite the product the technology is similar. Things that work for an earlier stage technology company may not resonate as much with the enterprise buyers. So continue adaptation towards those upmarket customers is something that we're working on and continue to excel at.
I think when you move up market, everything slows down, right? Your ACV gets bigger, but those conversion rates could drop, or the sales cycles get so long. It's a difficult shift that requires different skills. What factors, as you've been doing that, are there certain factors you see that speed up or slow down deals? Are there any memorable examples you can share without necessarily naming a customer?
I think as you go to selling to larger companies and enterprise, right, there are more stakeholders, right? There are not necessarily more decision makers for the purchasing decision, but there are more stakeholders that need to be satisfied. There's legal, there's compliance, there's security, and of course there is finance, right? Versus selling to a smaller company, they're just fewer people. So what we found really helpful is to anticipate those needs like early on, right? That having a super supportive champion is not the only thing that's needed to get a deal across the line. So we tell our sellers to proactively engage with those other stakeholders, almost remind our champion to make sure that they take those into account as they push for a different timeline. There's also more like relationship building, right? Like, those, as I said, right? I think many sellers are lazy and they stay behind their Zoom screen and which is I assume like bad habits that are coming from the COVID era. But now I think what the industry calls for requires more relationship building, right? And requires more events, whether it's at conferences and summits, or we do a lot of hosted events ourselves to build that relationship with the right buyer. Because it comes down to brand, it comes down to trust, and sometimes it's hard to build that in a completely virtual environment.
The saturation of digital channels is definitely making offline much more appealing and much more effective. As you find that kind of go-to-market fit, as you move up market and everything, are you finding as you integrate AI into some of your products, is it different than selling some of your more like traditional software? Like, are LLM products more difficult to sell? Are you having to deal with different buying committees in the enterprise? What are you kind of seeing in the market?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think on the plus side, right, like Gen AI creates those wow moments, especially when the use case is right, right? There are pain points that traditionally were not, it's not very easy to solve, can now be built into the product features that we have. And those wow moments are very powerful. Like we literally have video clips of people kind of seeing demo of our new features and say, oh, wow, like this is something I've never thought of that could be done. And that creates a lot of momentum behind the deal. I think on the downside is companies realize the novel risks around Gen AI, and the more serious and sophisticated buyers, like they start to have programs that have additional evaluation criteria for all of their vendors about their AI use, which comes down to the best practices that I mentioned earlier, right? So there are additional questions on the questionnaires. There are questions around like, hey, how do you use my data? Do you use it to train the model? How much of it do you share with outside of Gen AI vendors? So just requires all the SaaS companies to be more prepared and ready for those additional scrutiny, which is not going to go away.
Yeah, and do you work with customers directly on how to build that strategy, right? How to further improve their compliance check with the vendors that they're bringing on board? Are you seeing a big uptick in the number of AI vendors that are being adopted in some of your larger customers?
I would say we're seeing, all of the technology companies adding AI capabilities to their stack, and therefore, they're more subject to those different requirements from their customers. What would be helpful is again being proactive, right? Like we over the summer launched support for ISO 42001, which is one of the first AI standards. High Trust, which is a organization that we partner with, and they have their high trust standards for healthcare related organizations. They have launched a AI certification in the past months, which we're seeing demand as well. So being able to anticipate those additional questions and scrutinies around AI and invest in those compliance programs, we see that as a very effective way to mitigate those last minute gatekeeping questions about AI that may slow down your deals.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I think you said another thing that I hear a lot is that the WoW demo, right? It's become so much easier to build those WoW demos. I think getting those demos to function when it comes to the edge cases and the real details of implementation can be difficult.
Mhm.
I hear a lot of chief AI officers talk about, hundreds of POCs getting launched across their companies, but very few making it into full scale deployment. Like, what's your take on that? What does it take to actually move from that wow moment, the proof of concept, into a full scale deployment?
That is a great question. I think because of the stochastic nature of LLMs, right? The fact that it can do one thing well doesn't mean it will do it, equally well 100 times for slightly different situations. So to me, that first comes down to let's identify those use cases that actually make sense for AI, right? Like for Gen AI, right? It probably needs to have some level of kind of error tolerance, right? And it needs to have some level of flexibility in terms of variation of every time, right? You may get a slightly different result, but directionally they are correct. I think these are prerequisite for where we are in terms of Gen AI, right? So as you said, some of those use cases may be dead on arrival because they're just not best fit for the technology that we have today. And I think two is we need benchmark and testing across the board, right? Are there thing is the tool not performing well because the limitation of the foundation model, which is obviously harder to fix, but they're getting better pretty rapidly? Or is it because that we're not feeding it the right data that are supplied by the company, or we're not implementing it right, or we're using it for the wrong use cases? I think we need to look a little bit deeper into why do those POC fails, right? And kind of what's the underlying reason behind them, and how fast can we expect them to get better, right? As a result of better foundation models or better kind of internal alignments.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a very useful framework for people to think about. Like, is it a use case problem? Is it foundation model limitations? Or, you know, is it prompting problems, or is it really the context that you're feeding it? Where does the issue lie? That's a great breakdown for people to think about. Looking forward, in 5 years, you already dropped agent at the start of this interview. How do you envision AI transforming compliance and security? And what should companies start preparing for right now?
Yeah, I think, like many other verticals, we expect the way people do compliance and security completely to change, right? And, on one side, like whereas today in our line of business, whether you're preparing for an security audit or you're actually giving the audit, it's just still seeing a lot of manual work, right? People taking screenshots, people, marking check marks on trackers, collecting evidence manually, and also for our team doing the actual audit assessment in a manner that should be enhanced as AI workflow, right? And it will be hard to imagine that in 5 years people are doing those things manually. So like many other verticals, I think the day-to-day workflow is going to be fundamentally changed. At the same time, as we alluded to, there are just more novel risks, right? The phishing emails are going to get better, right? And the attacks are going to get more sophisticated and more scalable because of the technology that is available. So for all my compliance and security peers, right, we need to anticipate that the people who are attacking is going to be equipped with better weapons as well, and we just need to plan accordingly.
Yeah, there are some crazy stories of the ways that it's been used so far. And I've heard of fake Zoom calls, of deep faked voice, all the kinds of things you can imagine. It's a crazy future to think about. What excites you the most about it, and what concerns you the most?
I think many people compare GenAI to the internet or to electricity. I think compare with some other kind of hypey technology that we have seen over the past couple of years. These are not exaggerated. I believe that we're at a inflection point where the way people work, the way that software is built and being deployed is going to change pretty fundamentally in the next 3 to 5 years. Some would say that we're facing a potentially plateau for the current approach of the foundation models, but the problem is there are so many things to be optimized kind of throughout each step, right? If we can get 20% every step, like we're even the foundation models are not getting better as fast as they have been. There's still a lot of room to grow. And then you apply it to all the different kind of verticals, right? I think really the sky is the limit, and we have many, many years ahead of improvement just with the advancement in the foundation model that we have already seen to realize across different industries. I think what concerns me is, can we react as a society fast enough to handle all of those different risks, right? And you will see this across the board from the copyright issues, the bias, like what does this mean for social media, which is really all front, right? Are the regulators and the industry ready to handle those new risks? Because they're kind of being picked up very rapidly, and they're advancing very fast. Like, can we react fast enough to do that? And is the industry gonna come together and self-regulate in a meaningful way, for the better good versus short-term financial gain? I think it's hard to know, but I'm overall an optimist here that technology makes lives better. We'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, well, that got to my last question in this section, which was how you see evolving AI regulations affecting your business. I think you've touched on that a little bit. Is there anything else you want to add on that front?
Yeah, I definitely think there will be and should be more regulations. Obviously, we see the EU AI Act, right? I think US will probably respond in a more state by state basis and industry by industry specific rules. So yeah, I think we're gonna get it wrong a couple times, like we always do. But in general, this, there are too many new risks that we need the regulators to step up and truly understand the technology and find the balance between innovation and compliance. So that's why I'm very excited about the vertical that I am in, right? As more AI adoption comes, there will be more regulations and there will be more need for compliance. And Thoropass will be a part of that to kind of help our customers reject the false trade-off between compliance, security, and innovation.
Yeah, I think you're very well positioned for that. Is fragmented state level regulation an opportunity for you or a headache?
Well, I think that is a very American thing. It is a reality, right? In some sense, there's more regulations gives more demand for the service that we offer. But at the same time, I have to choose. Like I would want something that's like easy to implement and actually does the job that it's supposed to do versus creating additional paperwork and complexity for everyone.
Yeah, and I like your perspective that it's a false dichotomy to suggest that compliance and innovation are always at each other or kind of fighting each other. That kind of wraps up the full interview. Before we're done, I just want to ask very quick lightning round. What's the AI tool that you use the most?
So I recently started using this tool called Granola for note taking. It's great. It uses local audio output, so you can use any meeting apps of your choice, and that's a very good job.
Amazing. I'm sure the audience will love that. And what's your go-to resource for staying up to date on AI in general?
Usually the news finds me through my Google feed or YouTube feed. So I don't have a specific publication or place that I go, but usually things find me, and obviously all the different newsletters and podcasts that I subscribe to.
And what's a phrase or idea that recently stuck with you? It can be about AI or not.
It's I think this concept of service as software versus software as a service, right? That has been that everyone is aware of. But with the new tools that are now available, we can imagine like full-blown service offering to be replaced by largely AI agent or super empowered human or human kind of on steroid. And as a result, I think it's time to rethink how professional services are being done and how much more efficiency that we can get out of that. And that's something that I spent a lot of time kind of thinking through, both for our business and the industry as a whole.
Yeah, it's a phrase that I think is sticking with a lot of people. Me, it definitely is. It's trillion-dollar opportunities all over the place. And I could talk to you about that alone for another 45 minutes, Sam, but that's all we have time for today. If people want to follow your work, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, you can learn more about my company at Thoropass.com and or just search for Sam Lee Thoropass. You will find me on LinkedIn, which is probably the place where I post the most and spend a lot of time on.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Sam. It was a pleasure talking security, compliance, AI with you. I learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners did too, and I appreciate you making the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben.